Dankjewel. Ja. Ben ik te verstaan? Nog niet, hè, geloof ik. Ja? Beter? Ja? Oké, cool. Good afternoon. For me, the heavy opportunity to tell you in less than 10 minutes, because that's that much time we have, about how the GDPR affects cloud application usage and what the GDPR states about using the cloud. And I will do that based on a lot of slides, which I skip directly, because time-wise, we really have to speed up. Any questions? No. No, so this is the only slide which I want to talk about. It's about how the GDPR affects cloud application usage. And if we talk about cloud applications, we divide two kinds of cloud applications. First of all, we call it the sanctioned applications. Sanctioned applications are all those applications which are brought to the cloud on purpose, like Office 365, Salesforce, and all those kinds of applications companies bring to the cloud. And the other group of applications, it's called the unsanctioned applications. And unsanctioned applications are all those applications which are in use in your organization, but do not, where officially IT, security and risk is not aware about. We can also call that shadow IT. And what you see often in organizations, or at least in the past, is that people say, okay, the shadow IT I'm going to block. I'm just going to block all those cloud applications. Well, the effect of blocking a cloud application is, it doesn't have any effect. So because the user is creative, and he will find a workaround to go to that certain cloud application. The other thing is that the cloud, if the user can't reach that cloud application, he can also look on Google towards another sort of cloud application which he can use. And third, if you start blocking applications, you really start blocking the business process of your people. And we think that cloud application is something which you have to let go to, but fully control from an IT perspective. And I will tell you how we do that, and I will tell you how that affects the GDPR and how we are able to control GDPR requirements regarding cloud applications. Because the GDPR states five things about cloud usage. First of all, is make sure that your data, because it's all about data, make sure that your data is not flowing towards applications which are not under your control, shadow IT. That's one thing. Another thing is make sure that if you are going to use cloud and you're going to bring your data towards the cloud, that you only do that in sanctioned applications which are fully under control of your company. The third point is, if you put data into the cloud, make sure that you encrypt that data, that is encrypted into the cloud. The fourth thing is, if you bring that data to the cloud and it is encrypted, make sure that people who are able to access that data can only access that data and download that data when they are working on managed devices of the company with hard disk encryption. Because if you agree on let people downloading information on unmanaged devices, that can be another data leakage, because you don't know where that data is going, you don't have control over the device, and the data is not encrypted and the hard disk is not encrypted. And last but not least, the GDPR states, make sure that you have the auditability in place to track and trace exactly when you have a data breach of an escalation, which person from which device, from which location did what with my data in which application. So the full control and full auditability. So Netskope has a platform, it's called a CASB platform. CASB stands for Cloud Application Security Broker. And how to position that platform is always between the user and the application itself. And what you can see on the left-hand side, it doesn't matter for us where this user is active, whether he is on-premise, off-premise, if he's using managed devices, unmanaged devices, laptops, desktops, tablets, or phones. We have the ability to give you full coverage and visibility on what your user is doing, from which location, from which device, towards cloud applications. And if we talk about cloud applications, we talk about SaaS, IaaS, and PaaS. That's our definition of cloud applications. So based on a number of use cases, I will now show you what we do to protect your data and make sure you are GDPR ready. And I will do that based on a use case, on a number of use cases, based on those 5 main points the GDPR states about cloud application usage. So the first one we stated, which I already said, is make sure your data is not flowing into cloud applications which are not under your control. How do we do that? We are able to give you full visibility with the discovery module about which user is using which cloud application, what is he doing in that cloud application, and what are the risks. And based on that rich discovery, we can give you the visibility on what your users are doing and where the risks are. And based on that information, you, for example, can run reports and risk analyses like, okay, give me an overview, how many data did my company, or this person, or this device, of this part of the organization, or this country, doesn't matter, uploaded data towards cloud application which do not apply to the GDPR, or which have their data centers outside of Europe, or become ownership of the data. Fully automated risk analysis, where you can learn what your users are doing and see where the risks are. Based on what you see and what you have discovered, you are able to set policies. And policies are not like blocking or accepting things, but very granular policy controls. And how do we do that? And what kind of use case is attached to that? You can imagine that you say, okay, I see in my organization a lot of cloud storage usage. And maybe I want to set a policy which looks like the following, because we just stated that blocking is not an issue. You have to let people use cloud. So maybe you say, okay, when people are using WeTransfer, for example, and WeTransfer is not a very healthy, from security perspective, good application, but if they want to use WeTransfer for downloading information because they want to collaborate with their customer, with their clients, with their third parties, it's okay, because downloading information doesn't harm your data. It's all about what your people are doing with your data. So you can state, okay, you can download out of WeTransfer, but if you want to upload data towards WeTransfer, that's where you come in place. Then you say, no, dear user, this is against the policy. Can I remember you? You are trying to upload classified data, and this is not the place where we want classified data into. So with that sort of policy settings, you are able to let your user actively use those shadow IT applications, because they will use it and they will always find a workaround if you start blocking it. But you give fully control to IT, security and risk, on what is this user doing with my data towards that application. So once you detect that it is classified information, you say, okay, dear user, this is a policy violation. Herefore, we have another solution in place, and you coach them away towards a sanctioned application. Or maybe you say, dear user, this is classified information, or this is PII information, or PCI information. This does not belong into the cloud. Could also be a policy. But let's state that you have, for example, Office 365 in place, sanctioned applications. You can start coaching users towards, for example, OneDrive. So the first rule, make sure your data is not going, your classified data, your GDPR-related data, is not going into your shadow apps. That's where you can tackle this one. You can let people use it, but make sure you set the policies that people are not going with the wrong data into the shadow IT. That's one thing. The other thing is make sure that your data only can enter those sanctioned applications. Now, what Netskope does by policy enforcement, adaptive access control, is make sure that the user can only put that classified data into those sanctioned applications. So he's not allowed to upload it to Dropbox, but he is allowed to upload this data towards OneDrive, for example, or to Google Drive, or at least your sanctioned environment. Third point in the GDPR, what the GDPR states, was make sure that you encrypt the data. With our encryption module, we are able to set an extra policy, which could be like, okay, you're allowed to upload this data towards OneDrive, but if you do that, we will encrypt it with our keys, and our meaning the customer keys, and put it encrypted into a OneDrive environment. So that's where we tackle the third point. The fourth, I've lost my counts. Okay, but the other point is that adaptive is that how can you make sure that people can only access that data which you have now under control into your sanctioned application, and make sure that people can access that and who's doing what with that data. Because the GDPR states, make sure that you don't let people download information, classified information, on devices which are not under your control, or on devices which are under your control but doesn't have a hard disk encryption. So how do we do that? Normally with cloud, it's very dynamic and very flexible. So you can access your OneDrive environment from any device, any location, any place, anytime, anywhere. But stated what the GDPR says, you don't want it. You just want to have granular controls of what is and what is not allowed from a specific user, from a specific device, towards a specific application. So maybe you say, okay, if you enter OneDrive from your managed device, you can enter OneDrive and you can look at classified data, but you are not allowed to download classified information if this hard disk is not encrypted. Only when you apply to those settings, you can download information. And when you enter, you go home and you take the laptop of your partner and you enter the same OneDrive environment, because you do want to be flexible as a company and give them the same, at least the access towards this OneDrive environment also from a non-managed device. But maybe you say, okay, you can access that application, but you're not allowed to download classified information towards it. So you can look at it, you can forward it, you can work with it, but not allowed to download it. That's what the GDPR says. Make sure that you have control over where your data is downloaded out of the cloud. Another thing is that the data in rest, imagine you have your OneDrive environment or your Google Drive or your Box or Dropbox or whatever, Salesforce. You build up a lot of data in rest. And how do you control that me, working for the company, accessing that data and sharing that data with externals where you don't have any whereabout of? Because you don't have a clue what people are doing with your data in rest in your sanctioned application. Maybe there is information in your sanctioned application which is only allowed to be shared internally and not externally. Or maybe the specific customer information is only to be shared with only those 3 domains and not with the whole world. So what we do is we can also take a look at the data in rest and make sure we set DLP violations on what is and what is not allowed with that data regarding data exposure. So that's also what the GDPR states about controlling your data. Last one is the auditability, what I said. Because you can imagine that we see a lot what a user is doing, because we're always between the user and the cloud application itself. We see very deep contextual what the user is doing, and those metadata are going to be locked, and based on the audit and forensics, you are able to track and trace exactly when you have a data breach or an escalation internally. You can track and trace which user from which device, from which location, from which site is doing what, or have done what with my data, specific that data, into cloud applications, and where did it go wrong. So the whole auditability and tracking and tracing is also in place. Another phenomenon, what you see, and that's nothing directly what the GDPR describes, but that's more cloud usage in general, is that people start collaborating. Yeah, you build up your data, for example, again, in OneDrive, and you start sharing your folders with your clients, with your customers, with everybody. And you start working, collaborating in the same folder structure. And meaning that your external client or partner is working into your application. Meaning that if this specific client or this partner, this external one, gets infected by malware or ransomware, it's called a fan-out. So what that device then does is start synchronizing the folder boxes on his laptop. So he's starting to synchronize his malware and ransomware into your OneDrive environment. That's very scary. And Microsoft says, well, no, we are responsible for, and it's the same what Google says, and Dropbox and Box, etc. We are responsible for the availability, scalability, and the functionality of the application, but you still and will always be responsible for the data. So Microsoft will not be responsible for the fact that you are infected based on malware and ransomware which comes in from a third party. So what we do then is build a shield around your sanctioned applications, and it doesn't matter what kind of application it is, but make sure that from such a use case, which I just described, you cannot be infected on malware and ransomware activities. What's my time? I have 2 minutes left, and I'm going to make it. So we talked about discovery, we talked about adaptive access control, about our DLP, the data loss prevention engine, which gives you the ability to have full grip and control on that data layer. We talked not yet about anomaly detection. So what you see in those kinds of all the metadata we are collecting is that because we see so much of what a user is doing, and the more you see, the more you are able to control the user. But the more data is coming towards you when it's all about checking log files. It's undoable. So what we built an automated self-learning engine which detects strange behavior of your users using cloud applications. That can be, for example, bulk uploads, bulk downloads. Hey, are people trying to leave the company? Are they moving away data? Or people are downloading information out of Dropbox and sending it away with their Gmail? Does that look good? Looks like data infiltration. Or proximity events. All those kinds of things we detect on an automated base and be able to alert upon towards SIEM environments or towards whatever you want to be alerted upon. So that's our anomaly detection. We talked about encryption, not yet about workflows. We'll do that another time. And we talked about audits and forensics. I have exactly 1 minute left. So who wants to have that minute? Somebody? Somebody have a question about GDPR related or cloud application usage in general? Yeah, sure. Please do. Nobody? Okay, then I give back the time to the organization.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.